we've been suffering from a bit of a dual purpose here in the whole world of crypto since the very, very beginning. In the very, very beginning, Bitcoin version 0.1.0, the very first version that came out, had two components to it. One was the creation of a token, which some of you may have heard of, called BTC. But the other part was the creation of the world's first DApp, the world's first decentralized application. It was called Poker Lobby, and it was supposed to be a distributed way to play poker across the Bitcoin network. And in the second version of Bitcoin, Poker Lobby was entirely removed. But ever since then, we've had this tension for 15 years. From the very genesis of the world of crypto to today, we've had this tension where we've had two parallel tracks. The first has been Bitcoin, with BTC, an unchanging system for stable currency that you can transact with and that you can hold, and that's it. That's the entire list of things that you can do with it. Very, very popular with that transactional and holding capacity, but that's it. And then, on the other hand, we have the entire world of crypto innovation, a flourishing of chains and dApps and systems and technologies, which remains ultimately a small fraction of the entire crypto space and a small fraction of Bitcoin. And so we have this tension where Bitcoin can be and is popular and can be used for holding value. And as a result, we've got $1.3, $1.4 trillion effectively dormant or trapped in Bitcoin. And we have projects like Cardano building out tools that would allow you to do much more, to trade in a decentralized fashion, to lend in a decentralized fashion, and to build effectively an entire decentralized web architecture. We have functionality. So firmware and functionality, and those two, up until now, have not met. Cardano is a very special chain. It is by far the largest, most significant chain built as a UTXO system, like Bitcoin, and with a long-term view of the world, like Bitcoin. But it too cannot interact with Bitcoin. And so the big announcement that we have today is that that is changing. That we have a major change coming for the entire world of Bitcoin, the world of Cardano, the world of crypto, and the world of finance as a whole. Because for the first time, those two parallel lines, which were never to touch, are bending towards each other. We are now able, through BitcoinOS, to verify on Bitcoin mainnet zero-knowledge proofs. And this gives Bitcoin brains and eyes. For the first time, we can build smart contracts on Bitcoin, and we can give Bitcoin the ability to see what is happening on other chains. And possibly the most important chain to do this with is Cardano. What this means is that we will soon have the ability to trustlessly bridge assets from Bitcoin to Cardano and vice versa. We will also have the ability to utilize the smart contract capacity of Cardano to write smart contracts that execute on Bitcoin mainnet, turning Cardano into a smart contract platform for the largest asset base in the world. We're looking at an entirely new phase for Bitcoin, Cardano, crypto, and finance, and I'm super excited to be able to discuss it here on this panel first. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Edan. Thanks a lot for the nice start of the session. I guess my first question, starting off with that, would be, what's the significance of Cardano from the standpoint of not being, full UTXO, but EUTXO specifically, that allows, to not create something like WBTC, but instead fully, allow BTC to exist on Cardano as it is on Bitcoin mainnet?
Sure. So I think probably a lot of people have heard about how Ethereum, for example, has been moving towards a modular environment, utilizing ZK proofs for scaling and creating other chains like rollups. But Ethereum actually never planned to do that. It was never part of the original plan. And the EVM system, and more generally the account-based system, is actually suboptimal for that purpose. Because the account-based system, when you are taking the state of the system, and you are proving that state in the form of a ZK proof, doing that with an account-based system is extremely computationally intensive and difficult. But doing it with a UTXO-based system, where you don't have accounts that are constantly changing, but you have unspent outputs that are, either exist or they don't, they are binary, that is much more powerful. And so weirdly enough, Bitcoin turns out to be a much better system for building a modular crypto universe on, and for utilizing ZK proofs than pretty much any other chain except for Cardano. So Cardano, in my conversations with Charles, one of the reasons that he explained that he wanted to utilize UTXO architecture was to achieve exactly this kind of simplicity and finality. And so there's a very strong advantage there.
Thanks a lot. And basically, kind of exposing Cardano to BTC, what do you think would the impact be in the coming years from the standpoint of developing DeFi applications? Obviously, all of us saw at this conference that the ecosystem is growing quickly. But what would you think the next step for the DeFi ecosystem on Cardano would be to be able to compete with already well-developed DeFi ecosystem overall outside Bitcoin and Cardano?
Well, I'm a bit of a strange person to have on stage here because I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. And I've been looking at the development of Cardano over the last 8 years or so, kind of wondering what the hell are people doing? Like, why? Why do we even need this? And so kind of to end up here is an interesting irony. Right now, we have sort of two ecosystems that I think really need each other. On the one hand, you've got Cardano, which has a TVL of about $250 million. So we have a very powerful smart contracting system in search of an asset base. And on the other side, we've got an asset base of $1.3 trillion sitting dormant, a massive asset base in search of a secure, reliable platform for smart contracts. If 1% over the next year of Bitcoin's asset base were to transition over to Cardano, that would be a 40x increase in Cardano's TVL just from that. And I think probably we'll have opportunity to talk about some of the use cases, but one of the other things which is interesting about Cardano is that it has, of the various chains out there, particularly put a focus on institutions and the developing world. Now, institutions are interested only in Bitcoin. And so they're going to need a platform to do this, and Cardano is a good candidate. But beyond that, if you think about 200, 300, 400 million people in Africa and the global south more broadly who want to hold BTC, there is literally no technical way for them to do that directly on Bitcoin mainnet. And so we need some kind of system able to provide greater scale, and there too, Cardano has been building those routes for many years. One of the reasons that I'm working on what I'm working on is to make sure that there is no need for us to introduce changes like OPCAT or whatever. I think the real power of Bitcoin is that it's permanent. It doesn't change.
I agree.
And that's what gives us its reliability. But even if we were to see something like OPCAT introduced into Bitcoin, if we were to see Bitcoin forked, we still would not see the majority of computation occur on Bitcoin. Bitcoin has 4 megabytes every 10 minutes. It's not going to be where you perform the computation that you would have in a smart contract. And so the way we've constructed our system, and the reason we're using ZK proofs, is you basically have a tiny smart contract on Bitcoin, which just receives the end result of the computation. And you do the computation somewhere else.
But you still need like a verifier, right? That is external, that verifies the information that by the native blockchain itself cannot be verified, which I mean is a way around. And
so that's great. So that's the technology that we've introduced, BitSnark. The big deal is that we are actually verifying directly on Bitcoin mainnet. There is no external verifier. The verification is done by Bitcoin. First of all, Babylon have been among the pioneers in building additional functionality to Bitcoin. And the fact that, within 1 hour they brought in over close to $2 billion in value, that's just shows how thirsty the world is for things that they can do with their Bitcoin.
Yep.
Now, what Babylon have built, the staking with Bitcoin, is one of what I think are 3 big technological changes that are occurring to Bitcoin right now. The first is staking, which allows you to use Bitcoin for fast finality. The second is data availability layers being built on Bitcoin. And then the third is the ability to turn Bitcoin into a programmable layer itself through the methods of BitcoinOS, and in particular through ZK proofs allowing you to take the compute off-chain. You bring those 3 things together and you're looking at a totally different Bitcoin, and there's going to be ever more demand for people to do things. I'm sure people who have large amounts of Bitcoin, people who have smaller amounts of Bitcoin, and so there's going to be like you described, right? I think this really is the best time in the world to be figuring out how to start building programmable systems, asset management systems, smart contracts using UTXO systems. From a UI perspective, you can have someone who has their Bitcoin wallet, someone like me who's been sitting on their Bitcoin wallet for, 13 years, hasn't done anything, sort of can blow the dust off of it, connect via this, and trustlessly lend out their Bitcoin or turn their Bitcoin into collateral for a stable coin, effectively messaging the Cardano ecosystem, having a smart contract interact with my Bitcoin on the Bitcoin main chain, locking up Bitcoin there directly from my wallet. As far as I'm concerned, I have only used Bitcoin. Right? My UX experience has been fully Bitcoin, but I've gotten the benefit of all of the programmability that comes with Cardano. This is the advantage of a world now where you can have interoperability no longer be a dirty word, right? We're not now trusting people to move messages. What we're doing is we're building cryptographic extensions between the different chains.